Life's a Ball 90s by myself, Zak Waters, and Ivorbaddiel. Over 95 images, 144 pages, hardcover, limited edition of 750, about 200 by 300 millimeters in dimensions, and offset colour printing. What I want to do with this is just give you an insight into maybe how I created it and where it all stemmed from, and the journey to get to this stage, and where we published this in November 2021. So I'll just run through it. So the book is dedicated to football fans everywhere, signed by myself. So the four people who I was around at the time, when the idea was in full flow, was Helenchamberlain, Ivor Baddiel, Mikeamos, and myself. So here's the book. We split the book into two parts. First half, second half, obviously keeping into the theme of football and green and white. The first half is a lot of the sort of eccentric and, I say mad, but they were really lovely people, mad for the football team, football supporters, and then who were associated to just a club. And the second half were the Groundhoppers, who were football fans in their own right for their own teams, but were obsessed with travelling to different football grounds. And it became a bit of a big thing in the 90s, where we had the 38 club, which was travelling to all the Scottish grounds, and the 92 club, which was travelling to all the 92 clubs in the professional football league pyramid. But these guys would not only do that, they wanted to go to every single ground anywhere in the world. A lot of these people who were coming in on these trips were from Europe, from Holland, Belgium. So what I did was I spent a few weekends, 2 years running, covering, I think, 12 to 14, 15 different games in 6 days. And it was a real big thing which was set up by Mikeamos at the time, and it was called Groundhopping Weekends. So that's what this is, and this is just some of the fixtures, some of the images from the fixtures, and that was Easter 95, Easter 96. Now, when I first started doing this, I'm just going to drop this down and see, bring that down there. So this is a good example of the replies I got from a lot of football supporters when I was trying to find that fanatical supporter. I remember New Year's Eve, I think it was 94, I'd spent Christmas week and a couple of days into New Year writing letters, because it was the early 90s. I was borrowing a computer. The internet was sort of still in its infancy. It was there, but it was just happening. I had dial-up on my computer, and I was writing letters to football clubs, football supporters. I was searching for fanzines. I was trying to get onto football forums. I was trying everything. I was writing to football managers, football clubs. I was trying everything to find the fanatical football supporter. And then I just had a vision. I had an idea that I wanted to find these people, and I had no idea how I was going to do it. So I just kept writing letters. And this is a good example. A guy called Frederick Griffiths, who wrote back to me, and it's a picture of him there. And this guy, I think, sent me 30, 40, 50, 60 pages of type of just him, his stories and what he was about. And I received a lot of stuff. I even received dissertations. I say dissertations, they were sort of dissertation size, which is like 30,000 words of their travels in the 38 club or the 92 club, or just in their obsession to travel to every football ground. And they were writing it down and documenting it. So that's in a sort of example, and I thought it was a good start to sort of introduce it, give it a bit of the quirkiness. And this was a letter he wrote to the late David Rocastle, who was playing for Arsenal at the time, and he was obsessed with Arsenal, Frederick. So what also I did was, and I did this later, I wrote to a lot of football managers at the time and just asked them, what does sort of football mean to them? And I got a lot of responses, usually from the press office, saying a really long letter from like the press officers. I won't mention any managers who didn't want to do it, but what I'd get was like a long sort of 15-line paragraph of why they couldn't do it. And I was just thinking, well, why didn't you just write it? And why didn't you just tell them to the press officer's face, and then he could have written it down or whatever. Harry Redknapp sent me something back, and which was nice of him, and I've included that. But I continued this, and I've got a few letters later on in the early zeros from football managers and emails and stuff. And I was just obsessed with trying to get it out there, and I continued it. And I don't know why I stopped, because if I start doing it, I might have another little concept there. This was another example of the letters I got. Now this is from Martin Gray. I think he was the groundsman. In fact, I think he still is the groundsman of Forfar Athletic Football Club. If anybody's associated with Forfar or Forfar, please tell him it's in here. I must get in touch, actually. So it was just a sort of example, but I had piles and piles of letters, and sadly I couldn't use them all. So this is the program notes. This is the bit I wrote. This is sort of introduces it. It goes through how I met Ivor, how I met Helen, how I met Mike, why I did it, and sort of what possessed me in my association with Total Football magazine, who was published by Future Publishing at the time, and how the initial book came about. Because this Life's a Ball came about in the early 90s with Michael Joseph, the publisher, who's associated with Penguin. It's all in here. What I did was I found a few fanatical football supporters. I went to Total Football magazine because I really wanted to work for them, and I thought, who's going to take any notice of me? I'm just a young photographer out there. I'm nobody in a sense. So I sent them like 6 football fanatics with the writing. They got back in touch straight away, and I said, oh yeah, we love them, we're going to run them. And I was like, yeah, fantastic. And in fact, I'll leave the Scottishman having a wee on the English flag there while I'm talking. So what they did was they run them, and then they got back in touch with me and said, have you got any more? And I said, yeah, I've got another 6 or 7. I sent them, and they said to me, there's people who want to speak to you from Pearson Entertainment. And that's how I met Liz Lowe, who I mentioned in here. She was part of Pearson at the time. And literally it all sort of went a bit mad, roller coastered. Next minute, I was working for the magazine. I asked them if I could have a job, and they said yeah. And so I was shooting stuff. I had met ivorbaddiel, who's in here with the book. I was shooting, me and Ivor were just travelling around the country, creating great stories. It was wonderful. We're getting paid to like hang out with Everton football players and shoot off to do these mad stories. And then next minute, me and Ivor, I'd asked Ivor to jump in on this project. Ivor and I were in the Penguin's offices signing a 2-book deal. I mean, it was a mad. Here's me leaving university, assistant photographer. Now I've got a publishing deal, a photography book publishing deal for 2 books with Penguin, with Ivor. Mad. And BBC Scotland were going to do a little video on it. I think I spoke to the Observer. They were going to do the serial rights on it. Whatever. I'm not going to go into why we lost it. It was nothing to do with us. They literally scrapped our book. I sort of continued. I was devastated. We put it to bed. I collected a few more because we were literally we were in the process of making it. And then I ended up going and doing the Groundhoppers. I just kept shooting and shooting because I wanted to. I actually initially did this for a little magazine who are no longer around now. I can't even remember the name of the magazine. And I shot one of these for them, and they ran that, and I got paid, and that covered my expenses for that weekend. I can't even find it. I don't even know what magazine it was. So literally it went to bed. I continued making a living, being a normal photographer, shooting some stuff for the Total Football in other magazines, and that's it. In here is how me and one of mine and Ivor's jobs were when we went to watch England versus Scotland for the Euro 96, and the magazine gave us a couple of options. They said you can go to Glasgow, Aberdeen or the Orkney Islands to cover the England versus Scotland. We wanted to go there, 2 Englishmen in Scotland, and can you go to a pub and cover it? And we were like, Ivor and I were sort of weighing up the damage collateral, and we were trying to work out where we'd least be likely to be hurt. I thought if we went, I've been to Aberdeen, I've worked in Aberdeen, and I presumed it would be a crazy place to go for 2 Englishmen in the England versus Scotland game. I didn't really fancy going to Glasgow as well. So the Orkneys was a sort of softer approach, and that, but we would then be trapped on an island, and we took the risk and we thought, let's go for it. And we went to the Orkneys, and it's all in here. The stories are in here. And this is the Scottish guys weighing on the English flag. Obviously we beat them. Gaza scored. I don't really want to say too much more, but you can read more about it in here. It's one of the Northern League pictures. Midfield This is Dave Downs, and he's the Reading guy I've got in here. This was on the front of his house. There's a lot more to Dave than just the bottle wash and stuff like that. He's camped out in the middle of the football pitch. He's great. He actually is the radio commentator for Reading FC, and I've actually been up. I've met Dave a few times after this project, and I did something else with him. Went up and I watched a couple of games and stuff with him, sitting in the press area where he's commentating. It's amazing to watch, and he's a lovely guy. This is Ted, the guy with the West Ham man with the van. I shot this a little later than the one in the book, but it's got the same wings and everything. I just shot it a little later because I did something else with him a few years later, about 1999, so it's sort of still in the 90s. I was fascinated, and when I first met him to do this, which you'll see in a second, I didn't get a picture of his wings. It was on my mind. It was on my mind. This is the foreword by Helen, and actually, when I met Helen, I'll just be brief. We met at the Sky TV studios. I was there to photograph her. I couldn't photograph her. She said at the end, "Come to this game with her." So I was like, okay, I need to get the pictures. So at the end of Soccer AM, I jumped in the car with her and we headed off to Bury. We jumped in the away end and I photographed her. And she's actually one of the pictures. This is on the day I met her, and we shot off to the ground and I got that. I don't know who these guys are, but obviously Torquay United supporters. And it was a great day. We had a massive laugh and we became like really good mates after that. And then first half. Now I'll just do that and then I'll drop the book. Then I'll drop this down and we can photograph. So this is Ivor's introduction, and this is one of her pictures from our eventful weekend in the Orkneys. I got some great pictures on that weekend, not just the footy stuff, but I actually had to get some stuff for the magazine as well. So I had to spend 2 days just wandering around. We were trapped, really. There was no aeroplane out until the Monday. I had to get loads of landscape stuff and daft stuff and pictures of cows with footballs. It was mad. It was great. These guys were just amazing. They were lovely, and hopefully somewhere along the line some of them might see this book and read how accommodating and wonderful they were. They scared us for a little while, but that's all in the book. This is obviously a thistle, a bum, and a lot of very drunken Scottish men. And again, this is a continuation of Ivor's. They took Ivor out at half time, and we're going to, it's in the book, I'm not even going to mention it on here, but they're going to do a few things to him. He had an England top on, crazy. Turns up in Scotland with an England top on. And they were watching Braveheart when we walked into the pub, didn't even know we were coming. They were great guys, and this is Ivor. For about 10 minutes, he thought he was going to die. And this is Ray Hall. This is from another story we did with Everton. I remember we were sent to Everton's ground where David Unsworth and them were playing, Gary Speed, Duncan Ferguson, and this was Ray Hall. I think he was the youth coach. I might be wrong, but this is in one of the tactics rooms, and Ray's giving him a lesson. He still hasn't learned anything either. I do remember that day is that Ivor and I were having lunch with the players, and there was a table, and there was me, Ivor, Gary Speed, and Duncan Ferguson sitting at one table together. And Ivor and I were next to each other. Everybody at the time was really scared of Duncan Ferguson. We sat, I think, for 30 minutes having lunch with these two sort of quite famous, were famous football players at the time. And they never spoke to us once. It was the funniest, surreal experience I've ever had. They didn't speak to us once, and Ivor and I were just talking. But it wasn't like we're on a massive table, we're on a tiny table together, and he didn't speak to us at all once. And I never forgot that. And I sort of regret not speaking to them, but they just weren't interested. It was funny. They were nice. They were really nice. So now, what we've done in the book is we've got the story, and we've got the images. Dave Burnley. Now, I can't remember much about this day. I do actually remember driving home from this shoot. I remember coming down the M5 out of Stoke. I'm sure he lived in Stoke. I might be totally wrong. So, yeah, and his daughter was called Claret. And this is Dave's room. He was just literally everywhere in his house was claret and blue. And what we've done is we got the hex numbers for the proper club colours, and we associated the colours and everything with the correct sort of claret and blue and stuff like that. So all the way through the book, we tried to put the proper team colour in. So this is Dave in his room with his daughter Clara, and I think somewhere in bags here he's got like bags of the turf, of the actual grass. So these guys were just going anything to just take a part of the club home with them as well. I don't think Dave's, and obviously Dave changed his name to Dave Burnley. Gordon Way, who's sadly no longer with us. What a beautiful, lovely man he was, and he was part of St Andrew's ambulance service, which I think is the Scottish St John's. And we went to the club for the day, and we went to watch a match, and we went to obviously photograph him, and he's just playing bagpipes all the time. It was wonderful. And these two guys, I just wanted to get them in for the relevant to St Andrews, and he was very big, with his uniform, and he's a big part of it. But look at the ground, man, and I don't even know what the moon thing was, and what the ground was like. It was just, I don't even have any more pictures from this session. I took a few pictures of this and a few pictures of that. I think Ivor and I went, and we would go off for like 4 days and just work our way around Scotland and meet as many supporters who we'd lined up, sending emails out and all sorts of stuff. It was non-stop. This is Basil. Basil, I originally put in the first magazine article. I don't even know how I met Basil, but as you can see, he used to stitch the home and the away strips together, and I've no idea if he still does it or if what he's still doing. I was trying to get in touch with him when we started putting the book together again. And this stuff had sat in my filing cabinet since 1997 or something. After Michael Joseph, I sort of give up. I tried a few of the publishers and everybody loved it, but I think the cost print of it was going to be too high for the retail price at the time. I put it to bed, and I've not been able to get in touch with Basil at all. And that's his story there. Frank Sidebottom. I think Ivor and I went to this one as well, another trip around the UK. Lovely guy. And this was in his basement with his son and his dog. And he was just amazing. We spent a few hours with him. Obviously had to get, it was like the picture with these Altrincham United, even though he was a Man City supporter as well, there was a sort of mix. There's another picture in the book, which I used the Man City side and Frank and stuff. Sadly, he's no longer with us anymore. He's such a great guy. This was just heavy duty flash in the basement, and I was just blasting out. I got tons of pictures to just pray that I got a good shot, and thankfully you can see a little flare on the dog, and it was on transparency as well, so I had no idea what I was doing. I just got the exposures, and I was just blasting flash from the top of my camera. That I didn't take any lighting with me. None of this was done with lighting. In fact, this whole project I shot on one camera and one lens. It was a zoom lens. It was a 28-105 Nikon. The camera was the Nikon F100. That's it. That's all I shot this on. And actually, my Birdman book as well, it was 2 lenses, 1 camera. 1 lens, 1 camera with this, and it's very basic and a little bit of flash. I think at the time I had like a massive Metz flash, which you would attach to the side of the camera. They were far too heavy to go onto the top of the camera. And they were like massive beasts with these massive battery packs. I met Helen through Helenchamberlain. This is Helen Randall. And Helen told me that her friend was obsessive Torquay United supporter, and she had a car painted in the colours of Torquay United. But also, she had a Rude Hullet cardboard cutout, and that was perfect for me. The cardboard cutout, she was taking it everywhere. At her home, I was like, yeah, it's actually got a Torquay United tracksuit top on. So I went down to Torquay, literally 5-10 minutes with her, and I got this, and I put the Rude Hullet thingy in the graveyard. I had no idea what the car was going to look like, and I was shooting on transparency at the time, E6, so I couldn't see what I was doing. The same sort of thing happened here with John Padden. And now I'd heard rumours that this was this guy in Newcastle who had a fire engine. I don't know how I found this out, but I found out this guy John has got this black and white fire engine. So I managed to get in touch with him. I went up, photographed him. here. He didn't really want to be in the photograph, but there was all these like kids hanging around, and I think this chap came with them, I'm not sure, but they just appeared. I photographed him and I got a few different images, but it was all like quick. It was just like Helen shot, really quick. I'd spend like 6 hours driving up on like a 10-minute shoot. But here is quite interesting. This, if I remember, was in Walkergate. This is Wallsend and Walkergate. And this is where Chris Killip did all his shipyard stuff. So I know the area, and I was a student here, and I sort of come up from this area. And I had a flat down there for about 2 days when I was a student, and I got scared and left because it was quite rough. So these two images just like took 10 minutes and they just came about, and that's how stuff would come about really quickly, and I'd have to shoot off and go and capture them. Dave Downs. Now Dave's an amazing guy. He's a historian for Reading Football Club, and again, I'm not really sure how I got in touch with Dave, but he appeared in my life. He was one of the original 6 who I put in the magazine, and I'm so thankful for Dave, and he let me do loads of stuff, and I got different pictures with him. I've done stuff a few times with Dave over the years. This is the bottle wash, and I couldn't try and find a way to sort of, I didn't want to have him holding the bottle wash, even though I've got pictures of him holding the bottle wash. So there was just, this is on his mantelpiece above, this is where he kept them above the fireplace. There was a picture of him, this Reading Football Clubs, and I just wanted to get into the detail of these shots and the wallpaper and all that sort of stuff. So that's that shot. John Westwood, the infamous Portsmouth fanatic. Met up with John, good guy. They looked after me. I just trying to get images of him. Again, I'm shooting on transparency. Him and all his mates at the game. I can't even remember what game it was, but I just hung out with them, had a few beers afterwards. They were lovely. Yeah, I'm still in touch with John, actually. So, yeah, great story, great guy. Still going strong. Mike Salinger, again, no idea how I got in touch with Mike. Mike was a difficult one. He had a garden gnome, Ryan Giggs, and he was a bit like in the superstition bracket because we had like chapters for each one. We'd have like musicians, superstitions, namers, people who changed their name. And it was like quite difficult to try and work out how we'd visualize them to keep them all the same and with sort of continuity and consistency within each chapter of imagery. So Mike has a lot of superstitions of like driving and counting Eddie Stoddard trucks and stuff like that, and I wanted to get this Ryan Giggs garden gnome and Man United, and I just had to think of a picture to sum it up, and I just had him blowing leaves and doing stuff in the garden and stuff like that. And that was quite a tricky shot on another grey English day. Really nice story, really lovely guy. Keith said to me, oh, I've got a massive inflatable bull I take to the ground. I was like, how'd you do that? He said, well, come and find out. So a really interesting story about this is I was about 10 minutes before kickoff, 15 minutes, and I was walking around to take pictures of Keith and the bull, and I've got loads of different shots and different angles of this, and my girlfriend at the time was with me, and she sort of followed me around, and she sort of disappeared while I was shooting this, and I could hear the players sort of coming on and were warming up, and somebody came to me and said, hey mate, you need to sort your girlfriend out there. And I said, what do you mean? And I said, well, have you seen what she's doing? And I looked over, and this is like 5 minutes before kickoff. She'd gone onto the pitch and lay down on the pitch and was reading a book. She'd never been to a football game before. She wasn't into football. So the players are warming up on the pitch. The referee and everything was sort of on. The mascots were on. I'm shooting the ball, and my girlfriend is, I don't know, a few yards onto the grass, lying on her back. It was a lovely sunny day, and reading a book. And I was like, it was just unbelievable. So I had to sort of scurry her off, and I didn't get a picture of it. I should have. That was just a story of that day. Great shot. It was great, but I'm still in touch with Keith now. I did a tour of Scotland, and I went like every single day. I'd meet like 2 people. I can't remember even anything about this shoot. I remember the allotments right next to the ground. I don't know if they're still there. And I remember contacting these guys, but I can't remember actually taking this picture. I've tried and tried. I've tried to get in touch with these guys as well, and I can't get anywhere with getting in touch with them. So if anybody has any ideas who they are, where they are, just tell them this is out now. Jesus or the Yeti, another trip of Scotland. Probably this trip was the same one as the Dundee Arabs, and I can't remember this shot at all. I'd seen this guy on the TV. I'd seen him in the crowd, and this big bearded man, I thought, I've got to get in touch with him, and I managed to track him down and got him on the list and went out and photographed him. And that was it, really. That was in his attic room with his thing and his dog, and photographed him. And I've kept this. I've got a few different ones, and I like this one because the dog was in and stuff like that. Diane was one of the first people I photographed. Wasn't the first, but I'd heard of this woman who had a cardboard cutout of Stuart Pearce, and she would clean it every day. She still got it, still looks after it. I'm still in touch with her. I contacted her for the book and stuff like that. She's still around, still got the cardboard cutout. And I just thought, wow. So she was one of the main people what kept me going, that I thought, I've got to find more people like this. And there was more people like her. This was that in the initial 6, and just kept this sort of inspiration for me to keep going and get out there. Harry Palmer, I have no idea how I got in touch with Harry. He was another one in my trip, I think, getting just on another route, trying to find people. There's a lot of people who I photographed and met and got letters off and talked to, and are not even in the book. That's more material. I just put in what I thought was relevant at the time. Bradford City, Nina. Me and Ivor there. In fact, that's my car. My car's in a few of these shots, my old Golf. And Ivor was in another shot. Ivor had this idea when we were shooting it that he wanted to do something like Hitchcock in being certain shots. He is in a couple in the book, or maybe one, but he was in the original of this, and I chose the second shot I had of it, which I thought was better, of the geese walking by. Anyway, she knitted the football strips for all of these bears. I think this was the 38 Club. I've actually got her essay, which is like a book on the 38 Club. If anybody knows Nina or family, I can't find her anywhere. Please get in touch with me, and I'll give them this book. It hasn't been published, and it's her travels of travelling to all the grounds and knitting all of these bears. It's amazing, and I've still got it. Oh, this is like the teddy bears picnic, by the way. George, he was the first person I photographed in my journey in photographing football supporters. And I went down to spend, I'd heard of George having this garden in the Torquay colours, so I went down with my Met flashes and my one lens and my camera in my Golf. When I was confronted with it, we were looking out from his kitchen, and we were looking down and looked at it, and I thought, wow, I got a couple of shots. And then I went down and started taking pictures, and none of them I could really get a sort of full scale or a bigger scale of him and the garden. So he trustingly let me go back into his house, and I shot out the kitchen window, and I think I got it, and I loved it, and I got the pegs here and stuff like that, and yellow and white. I'm so happy I got the shot, and this was like the first shot in the journey for Life's a Ball. Big Pie on my Scottish tour. I think with this too, of Scotland I did, where I photographed Big Pie and Jesus, and I can't remember any of it. It was a total blur. I can't even remember how I got in touch with Big Pie either. And that's his story about the massive, he's a very big guy in a very big knitted scarf. In fact, I've got a picture of him at the toilet. You only want to go into it, but it's a picture of him in the scarf and his legs and the toilet cistern and stuff, and he's on the toilet, but we don't want to go into that. Vinnie the Parrot. Now, Vinnie was part of the Jungle Tales book when they're dressing up as a parrot. The story's in here. And again, another shot turned up in Glasgow at like 6 o'clock at night. I had to get him. I'd just come from Paisley, where I'd been in a snooker hall photographing a guy with St Mirren tattoos in a snooker hall. It was crazy. It was very surreal. Sadly, I didn't use the shots, but I had to go in the middle of Norway and meet up with this chap. I don't know where he is. I'd love to get in touch with him. And he put his outfit on, and the Jungle Tales is part of his story. And I got this, and I got a few shots, and I got one with his hat off, but his head off, and his parrot head off. But I thought I'll do this one. It's a bit ambiguous. I met a guy called Jim Greer who had a massive flag. He introduced me to Jim. Me and Ivor stayed at John Greer's house, and John introduced us to Jim. This was part of another Scottish journey, and Jim had all these he was very superstitious, and there's funny stories in there, and he had all of this sort of back garden stuff, and it was lovely, perfect lighting and stuff like that. So I got a subdued picture of him in the garden contemplating. I didn't use the one of John with the flag. It just didn't fit into the run of the images. Nick was the drummer at Lincoln City Football Club. I've done a lot with Nick over this time, and I shot a lot, and it's quite tricky again, shooting with transparency with my massive flash. It was just madness. You can see it in the lights here. In fact, I just dropped this down a little bit. It's quite a surreal picture. He only had a little portable TV, and he would drum to the TV, and there was another shot where the TV stuff, the actual images were in there, but it's very difficult. It's not like TVs now. And that's me shooting him in his living room, practicing and stuff like that. I did some stuff with him a few years later on something else, and I did some portraits of him. I think 5 full portraits I shot of him later on for something else. So I kept in touch with a lot of these people. Again, I think the Charlesworth just probably got in touch with me, saying they were fanatical Aston Villa supporters, and I headed up to Birmingham area, Wolverhampton area, wherever they were, and I photographed them. It was really difficult. I was just trying to make a surreal, fun picture, to make it book-worthy in a sense, to fit the narrative, to fit the strength of the other pictures. It's really, really difficult. And I'm fresh on the field. I'm new. I'm not experienced. I haven't got 10 years of... I mean, I did, but I didn't have... At a commercial level, I didn't have 10 years worth of commercial, professional level photography. I'd had a few years, but I'd had a lot of good teachers, and I'd been taking pictures for a long time. And I was shooting... At the same time I was shooting this, I was shooting my birdmen. So I was very busy. I was shooting my birdmen, I was shooting the football, I was working as an assistant, I was shooting corporate work, magazine work. I was really busy, and I had enough money to be able to go out and shoot. And I used to get shoots and get like a job in Liverpool, and I'd use the chance to get paid to go off to Liverpool and try and meet a supporter or try and meet a birdman person. And that's what I did, and I sort of played it a lot, and so other people were effectively covering my expenses. Billy Bluebeat, this is a contact through Ivor, and he had the nose hairs plucked out of his he was very superstitious, getting nose hairs plucked out of his nose and stuff. But again, trying to get another living room shot, just trying to make it interesting with my big hefty flash guns. His stories in there. That's Billy Bluebeat, Chelsea. I can't even remember how I got in touch with Carl or how it happened. I know I just headed to Chester and was in another backyard, and my life was backyards of birdmen and football supporters, and trying to create something out of nothing really. I can't remember. I was struggling with this picture, and I just got him to put it on the clothesline and look back, and I flashed it and blah blah blah, and it happened. I think it's quite a nice surreal image. But he got this is the club badge, and the club changed its badge literally after he got the tattoo. Can't remember what it's in here. Now, this is Peter Sampara, who I did some stuff with the Juventus and Liverpool flag, which commemorated the Heysel disaster. And he was a badge collector, and I did a load of stuff with him in the Cop. And when there was a game on, I've got a funny story about that as well. So I did some pictures with him, and then didn't include him in the book because I didn't have his story. I remember meeting him a few years later, and he didn't really, for his personal reasons, want to be included in the book. So I put in this piece of the rock from the Cop in, so I didn't have him in there. And he had some great stories, and I really wanted to get him involved, but I have to respect the fact that he didn't. And I think he'd be okay with this having the Cop, this is the original Cop. But one story was that I went to photograph him on the day, and I said to him, all right, listen, I'll photograph you in the Cop end with all your badges on in the game. Liverpool were playing Middlesbrough. So me and Ivor went up to watch the game. We got like a press card each. And Ivor, being Ivor, didn't want to go on the pitch. He wanted to sit in the press box and drink tea and have a nice time and nice and warm and watch Liverpool at Anfield versus Middlesbrough. And I had to go out and do all the cold graft. And it was a Saturday, cold Saturday game, winter. And I went and stood behind the Cop with my camera gear. And I had him in full sight with all his kit on and got some pictures. And we were playing Middlesbrough. And David James was in goal. So I'm sat, I'm not there to take pictures of the game. I'm not interested in taking pictures of the game. But I was really interested in the game. So I can't remember how it went. But I got some pictures of John. And I would go back every now and then. But to be honest, I had my camera kit, one camera and a lens, which wasn't suitable for football. And I was just watching the game, and Liverpool were like beating them 5-1 or something like that. It was brilliant. I remember halfway through the second half, I was just sitting watching the game, and this young kid behind me said, I can't even do this guy's accent, but he was like, hey, what you doing? You're just sitting there. And he sort of said to me in this guy's accent, he says, are you a Middlesbrough supporter? And I went, no, I'm a Sunderland supporter, so I'm enjoying the thrashing you're giving Middlesbrough at the minute. He went, you're a Sunderland supporter? And then he started telling everybody, that whole area of the Cop started singing. There's a sort of Macam in the crowd. There's a Sunderland supporter. Then all point to me. And all the Middlesbrough supporters started booing me. It was hilarious. And David James is in the goal. He didn't have much to do. And he's laughing his head off and he's like looking at me. And all the Cop are sort of shouting at me, smack him on the pitch. And all the Middlesbrough supporters booing me and stuff like that. Anyway, this is a Manchester United potty. This was, I can't remember where this was, but there's a little Manchester City baby. I put the ducks in, another living room shot, potty, Manchester United baby. The rest you can work out yourself. Dave Nicholson, he sadly passed away, and he was notorious for dressing up in sort of fancy dress and stuff like that. And yeah, he was great. Another day, another real struggle to get that shot. Remember this shot really well. I met Thomas through various sources that he was a scarf collector. I'm thinking, how can I photograph a scarf collector? So I had this idea. I said, Thomas, I'm going to wrap you up in all of the scarves and I'm going to put you in the middle of a field. And I said, do you know anywhere? And he said, right next to where I live, just off the M1 or something, there's a massive farmer's field. I said, right, I'm in junction, whatever, at 5 o'clock in the morning. So me and Ivor raced up, met him at the junction, took him onto a field, started wrapping him up. And I've got loads of shots of this. And I just didn't know how else to photograph him. And I got a whole series of shots. I think this one, the scarf fell off a bit, but I wasn't bothered. He's actually a Derby County supporter. Still in touch with him, and he still speaks to me after I just dirtied all of his scarves. But I just wanted to do something different. I had to try and think and create something totally different. I don't know how I got in touch with Simon. When I went down to Brighton to shoot this, and this is him counting pigeons and stuff like that, and a grey, beautiful day, classic British weather. So I had to find some way of, and this is not doctored in any way, it's not photoshopped, it is what it is. He was looking up pigeons. It took us ages to get the shot to sort of illustrate pigeons and him and the whole method of how he calculates scores, and it's all in the book. I sort of remember meeting the Copland Nutter. I remember going to Glasgow, I remember going to his flat, and he was famous for the suit and his exploits and stuff like that. I got a few different shots, really difficult again. It was a very difficult portrait, and how I had to get him, but at the time his story was important and I wanted to get the suit, which was important, and just trying to get him, and this is where he lived, and this is what was relevant to where he's got up, and it was sort of football pictures there and stuff like that. Very tricky shot. Bamber Bridge, I can't remember much about this night, but I remember this. There was one opportunity. Getting a shot for me, I thought was pretty rare. I was aware of this ritual. I heard it was happening, so I got in touch and I just headed there, and I got this, and it doesn't happen all the time. It's based on Preston or Blackburn being relegated or promoted, the stories in here. So I got this shot. Not many people will have this sort of shot. This is Frank and his Man City slippers. I just wanted to get something with Frank and Manchester City on and stuff like that. So rest in peace, Frank. Mr. and Mrs. Binns, if I remember rightly. Bradford City were something at the time, one of the oldest football supporters. And I went up to Bradford and got their picture again with the dogs. And it was another series of images in living rooms. And how I did it, I'm not really sure. I was shooting a lot of living rooms and I was quite used to using really low light and trying to get my flash right and working quite crudely. And I'd shot a lot of living rooms with a lot of my projects and a lot of my day-to-day work and stuff like that. Tango, I'm not going to go put this on record officially, but I think I was one of the first people to paint him orange, and he was famous. I think he'd been painted orange, but was getting a bit of a name for himself as a Sheffield Wednesday supporter without his top on, and like the Tango man. I think Tango in the drink format was very, the advert was going out and it was getting quite popular. And I remember meeting him. I think he had the orange paint because I said to him, "Can I paint you orange?" And he was like, "Yeah, all right." I met him a few years later and I did some portraits of him a few years later. I just joked, "Can I paint you orange?" And he just looked at me. He was like, "Get out of here." And I did some stuff with him later on, about 5 or 6 years later, on something else. So I kept in touch with Tango as well. And it was again trying to get a decent picture of him. And I think I met him really late in an evening as well, as you can probably see. I think this is actually at Sheffield's ground. It might be wrong. It's somewhere. Ivor's in this shot again, trying to get this shot of the motion of Brian and his sort of rituals and superstitions of him walking. I just didn't want to get a shot of him just standing still, and his rituals and stuff were in this thing. And he came into that section of superstitions and rituals, and I wanted to get a picture which involved his process, and it was very difficult. There's another person I missed out and I didn't put in the book. He's probably the most travelled football supporter in this country, still doing it. I'm actually interested in doing some stuff with him. He is amazing, and I haven't put him in here and I won't go into him, but he also featured in the initial book, and I haven't put him in this one. Somebody who I might look back at, he's in his 70s now and he's still going to football grounds, and at the time I was photographing him, he'd already done 4,000 grounds. It's just crazy, or 4,000 games or something like that. So Ted, I heard about this guy in East London who had this West Ham van. Found him. He was one of the initial 6 who I put in the feature for Total Football magazine, and which got me the publishing deal and all the interest. I think he went on the Big Breakfast, and a lot of them were sort of taken off and put into chat shows and stuff like that. It was mad. I didn't get involved. I'm not interested in that sort of stuff. And there's his story. Just had this mad van. It was just great. Can't get in touch with him now for the life of me. So if anybody knows Ted, please get in touch. What was a football fan? This Gary Edwards was one of the first of my 6 who I put in the initial Total Football article. He's a painter decorator in Leeds, doesn't like the colour red, which I thought was ironic, putting the red there, and he gets wrong off the council for stripping red from this area and stuff like that. The story's in there, a little bit of the story in there. I've done a few bits with Gary over the years, but sadly I couldn't find his story. And when I say I couldn't find his story, when I dug all of this stuff out, I kept it all safe in a filing cabinet for like 20 years. None of it was digitalized, so I had piles of printed out stories which I had to transcribe onto Word, and I discovered Dictate on Word and dictated the whole lot over about a week, and I could not for the life of me find Gary's original story. None of it had been digitalized, it had all been hard copied. How I'd kept it all is beyond me, and I've moved so many times over the years. I'm so blessed that it was still all intact with all the original letters which you're going to see from here, from the Groundhoppers. And another thing was that all my pictures I'd put into my friend of mine's factory, and I'd forgot about them, and they were in another filing cabinet. He called me or something and said, "Look, we're clearing the factory out." He said, "Can you come and get your stuff?" And I was like, oh my God, I've got a filing cabinet full of my images, all transparent. I said, yeah. So I got a little van and I went up and I'm telling you, this stuff was about to get thrown out. Not that he would do it, but it was literally, people were coming in and clearing it out. And when I literally scooped in boxes everything what was in the filing cabinet, and I left the filing cabinets and I went home, and in the filing cabinets was all the original Life's a Ball images, was all original stuff from a lot of things I've done I'd forgot about, and I would have lost a lot. It was crazy. Just like that, all this stuff would have just been in a skip. It's crazy, and it makes me think how many other people have lost stuff like that. So I was very lucky there. Thankfully, my mate called me and I got round to go and picking them up just at the last minute. Anyway, second half. So this is the Groundhoppers. There's my car again, and this is the weekends, Easter weekends, 2 Easter weekends of these guys coming from all over Europe, getting 3 football games in a day. I'm not going to go heavily into the rituals, but it's a massive different rituals that each of these supporters have of photographing everything they're doing, taking notes, counting corner flags, counting goals, counting attendance. It just goes on. So Mike, who I met on these weekends, he's written the introduction, and there's a picture. He was a Dutch guy actually on the bus, and that was the bus. OK Travels, and we'd just go to a game at 9 o'clock or something in the morning, or 10 o'clock, do that game, get on a bus, go somewhere else, do a game for 3 o'clock, get off that one, go to another game for 5 o'clock. And we did that for like 4 days running, over 3 or 4 days. And this was like these weekends. It's exhausting, especially when it's in the middle of sort of October. So they were obsessive note takers. I'll just drop that down. And this is some of the original stuff I'd kept in the filing cabinet as well. And I copied that. The itineraries, and you can find out, you know, shot and comrades. And this is like the team sort of the team list for both teams on the sort of turnstile gates. It's crazy. This is the entrance to the ground where they're taking the money to come in, and it might be like Wickham or something like that. That's Durham City. And like, this is what you get, and it's great revenue for these small clubs. People like fanzine sellers and outside of the grounds and stuff, and classic. Like, this is Northern Premier League, you know, so it's like a couple of tiers down from like even the National League, and League Two, it's like 3 or 4 down. So it's quite old and basic, and you know, I don't know what they're like now. You know, this was like 15 years ago. Classic sort of stands, team selection on a blackboard. It was how it was. It was amazing. There's an example there. Food and pies, and just, this is it, you know, the stands, and these are some of the Groundhoppers with their carrier bags. This is just like full of mementos. They'd get grass, they'd get bags of stuff, they'd get anything they would just take, they would buy. And this is some of the letters from Mike from 95. Again, kept it all. Just imagery, trying to, you know, guy with his crash helmet on. The announcer. I like that. Drinks not allowed. There's people with drinks and stuff. Just a bit ironic. Support is how close I could get to the players. It's crazy. I was like there, they were watching the game. It's beautiful. I love it. It's one of my favourite shots. This is actually probably one of my favourite shots. I was really sort of developing as a photographer, and I was really getting into composing and trying to put as much in the frame as possible. And when I first sort of looked at this, I loved the light. The light was amazing with the white wall, and this guy was on this thing, and he's telling everybody what the teams are and stuff like that. And there was nothing here. I could see there was something here, and I sort of had that, you know, in itself that's quite a nice shot, but for composition wise, but it wasn't sort of given as much dimension. And all of a sudden this sort of guy walked in, and he was having just obviously took a respite and taking in some sun rays, and then this guy was sort of edging in here, but this guy sort of then helped make the shots. So we've got like this in the forward plane, and the sort of back plane is these two guys, and the mid plane I guess is sort of this, but it's just sort of the composition, and I was really proud of that shot. And again, it was done on E6 transparency, so I couldn't see what I was doing. I just had to interpret it all, and it's not like digital. I could say, oh, it was rubbish and delete it or whatever. This is all in my head and all interpreting, and thank God for E6. It's so helped me as a photographer. And like with this sort of stuff, this is the sort of page with my two favourite shots on, and this is the sort of ball, and I think this ball had come over, and they're watching the game, and the ball had gone back out, and he was heading the ball up from the game. It was just, it was a bit mad, you know, and trusting supporters with the ball. And this is Wolfie, and he was a funny old football supporter. He was like a Watford supporter, but he was like fanatic. He had ginger hair as well, called him Wolfie. Dog was fascinated with him. But he had this superstition of kicking the match ball. Like, he had to kick the match ball, so he was waiting behind the game to get the ball. And I think this guy had beaten him to it, so he's just waiting to pounce on a ball which had come out of the ground. So he has to be the first to touch it. So they just sit there and wait for the ball to be kicked by the players, and then they touch it, and that would be a game complete for him. Another classic stand. I don't even know where this was. And just shooting the different grounds to a fence. This is a story behind it here. The post, the crossbar, actually wooden one, it shattered, and I just loved the guys with the cans of beer and all just sitting looking around trying to pop it up. They fixed it, and like we're drinking cans of McEwan's or something like that, and that was when I spotted it. I was over here and I spotted it going down, so I raced over, and it was in the middle of the game as well. It's great. I love that shot. I've got a few different versions of it. Classic non-league setup there. Guy with his bike helmet on again. I was a little bit fascinated with the toilets. There's this sort of gents and people queuing up for the toilet. I got a bit of a fascination in trying to find the different toilets. I've got a few different shots as well. Again, close as heck to the players. Another ground where they're putting in information on the blackboard. And team selections and writing down all the facts in their notebooks. This, I think, was Tolo United, and this is one of the stands. And I think Tolo has got like a pitch which goes sort of like that, and this is at the top. So it's a real bit of it was a bit of a tactical skill to get the first half. You get going up the pitch. So in the second half, your opponent was more tired, so Tolo would go on the slopey side and have much more of an advantage in the second half. That's what I heard anyway, but it was slopey. With my fascination of the gents and toilets, this guy was actually doing what he is supposed to be doing, and he was lovely. He just didn't mind. I said to him, I sort of spotted him having 2 seconds to himself, and I just said, look, can I take a picture of that? And he was like, yeah, go for it. And he was really nice, and I got that. And I didn't actually know anything about the picture because I couldn't see it, and I forgot about it. There was just one-off shot, and I remember looking through the transparency selections, and I spotted it, and I went, wow. I didn't even know I'd shot it. I did know I'd shot it, but I hadn't realised how sort of strong it was, and I can't even remember the referee and linesman thing being there. And just sort of the togetherness, opposite sort of father and kids there, the sort of togetherness, and he's bored out of his mind, poor chap. And I sort of, they'd end this traditional ground hopping weekend would be like Old Land's End and stuff like that. And these guys are from all over Europe, and there's Mike there. That's a certificate you get. Here's all the information. I just had this idea of like putting a wall, because I remember at Sunderland they put the names of everybody who contributed money to the new stadium, and they put in their names on a brick wall, and we just had this idea to put everybody's names who helped on the thingy. And some of the names in here I added because they'd helped in the process of the book when I was shooting it. So there's a couple of names which one here, and then most of the names are from the Kickstarter, which we successfully, thanks to you guys, were able to successfully get the funds and publish it. And there it is, and I hope I haven't waffled on too much. That's the back with this football pitch and the names. But I don't know, I just wanted to somehow give some insight. I think it was important, just if anybody wants to jump in on this 20 minutes in, or just get an idea of what was the thought process and what was behind me taking some of the images, and just give you some insight. Thank you for listening. Please share, please buy the book, and please subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate all the subscriptions and all the views, and I've got thousands more books I'm going to get online. I've got ideas for other things I'm going to do more camera 5-on focuses and more stuff like that, interviews, and I've got a few things I'm working on at the minute, and I'm going to go really full on with the book reviews and stuff for 2022. Thank you for listening. I hope I haven't waffled on too much. Have a great new year. All the best. Bye.
We are floored, we are bound down, see us, careless corpse, see us, steal dawn, we are storm. We are storm. See us born, see us wind down, see us fly.